Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wioya. Chapter 457. Approaching Omen. Part 1. The Reverse 8 Divine Generals Technique. It's a type of magic that uses the 8 human talismans to control spirits. If used well, this technique can artificially create a vengeful spirit through sorcery before the soul completely scatters to heaven and earth. However, there's a major prerequisite for this to work. It requires instilling a strong grudge before death. There was a good chance it could have worked. Ghost Blade had the conditions to become a vengeful spirit due to his strong loyalty and anger towards Mok Gon, but at the last moment, his daughter Chuanchu's words instantly dissolved all of that. This was evident from his peaceful expression as he breathed his last. "Why, did you stop?" To Chongrayang's question, Mok Jiangnan replied with a soft exhale. "Because he can't become a vengeful spirit now. You've changed a lot, mortal." Chongrayang felt strange at Mok Jiangnan's answer. He used to be someone who couldn't feel any emotion other than anger, even more so than herself, a vengeful spirit. But now he was somewhat responsive to others' emotions. The old him would have cut Chuanchu's throat to draw out Ghost Blade's anger for his own purposes. However, now he let him go. The emotionless one was gradually becoming more human. However, the secret of Moon Vein that can persuade incarnate. Just tell me what that means. Cut out all the unnecessary talk and hurry. Ryu. So Wool and you. You are fated. What on earth did this mean? Those last words left by Ghost Blade kept swirling in her mind. Having been with Mok Jiangnan for a long time, she had shared most of his experiences. Because of this, unlike her feelings for Mok Jiangnan, her doubts about his origins were growing. The unknown being inside him, as well as the incarnate mentioned in Fire Faith Order's prophecy. And you. Have you really lost your core and become human? Did you hear that from Ghost Blade? Becoming human. Human. Kikek. I really hate it. I really hate you. No, I loathe you. A being expelled from its clan, degrading itself to become human. I can see your detestable intentions. What did Mok Gon mean by those words? He spoke as if Mok Jiangnan had been a non-human entity that became human. Her thoughts were becoming increasingly complex. At first, she thought it was just a coincidence. But at some point, she realized that Mok Jiangnan's path and her own were becoming increasingly intertwined. What was going on? Although she kept denying it, saying it couldn't possibly be true, someone kept coming to mind. She was aware that he, too, was no ordinary being. But due to death, she had become a vengeful spirit without knowing anything about him. Ryu. So Wool and you. You are fated. Could it be that what Ghost Blade tried to say at the end was? Just then, young Master Mok Jin Yurin called out to Mok Jiangnan, who had been staring at the dead Ghost Blade and the sobbing Chuanchu holding him, in a small voice. As he turned his head, he saw that her face was flushed red. Judging by her moist eyes, it seemed she had shed tears watching this father and daughter. She, too, having lost her father, felt sympathy for their shared pain. Ahem. In the end, did you hear nothing from him? Jin Yurin asked in a whisper, clearing her throat as if choked up. Mok Jiangnan shook his head at her question. He hadn't been able to hear the few things he really wanted to ask about. At Mok Jiangnan's response, Jin Yurin spoke in a troubled voice. The outcome isn't good. Even though we prevented the forbidden technique from falling into their hands by defeating Mok Gon's avatar, we still don't know where his main body is. What did you just say? Pardon? Before mentioning his main body, I said we prevented the forbidden technique from falling into their hands. At her words, Mok Jiangnan furrowed his brow and then asked, did the wicked granny have the forbidden technique memorized in addition to the secret book she gave me? That's right. Because she had been captured by them, the wicked granny revealed the forbidden technique to save her from them. And she ultimately sacrificed herself for her. Seeming to be overcome with emotion again, Jin Yuren spoke with reddened eyes. But one avatar here was killed by you, and the other two avatars were trapped when Cheol Surayan destroyed the formation, so ultimately, Mok Gon's main body. No. They share consciousness. What? Tuk tuk. Mok Jiangyun tapped his head with his finger as he replied. They share memories with the avatars. As a result, the forbidden technique has fallen into the hands of Mok Gon's main body. Mok Jiangyun clicked his tongue as he said this. But it was hard to blame anyone for this. If he hadn't been dragged into the bamboo scroll of the 8 trigrams, he might not have reached the level of extreme sword and the supreme sword until now, which could have been dangerous. In the end, it was a case of gaining one thing and losing another. The only fortunate thing was that all the enemy had obtained was the spell formula of the forbidden technique. Thankfully, Chong Ryong and Wai Soyan are on our side. If even one of them had been in the enemy's hands, it would have been troublesome, but since he had also retrieved Wai Soyan, who held Chong Ryong's soul, there shouldn't be any problems with the forbidden technique. Unaware of this, Jin Yuren spoke in bewilderment. Then we have no time to waste. No, but still. Didn't you see what I sent through Dam Bakha? Dam Bakha? Ah, I see you didn't. If the forbidden technique has fallen into the hands of Mok Gon, the leader of secret society, they will bring about a day of catastrophe incomparable to last time. At her words, Mok Jiangyun asked with curiosity. What does the forbidden technique have to do with the catastrophe? The reason Mok Gon wanted to obtain the forbidden technique was because of Bayon Hian of Heaven Vein, the will of the body he occupied. Wasn't he forcibly holding on to Chong Ryong's soul, preventing her from properly reincarnating, out of an endless madness to have her in his possession? As if to answer his doubts, Jin Yuren drew a picture on the ground with sharp energy. Suk suk suk. What she drew was a map of the entire Central Plains. Wondering why she was drawing this, he saw her mark 5 spots around the edges of the Central Plains map. 1 in the north, 1 each in the northeast and northwest, and 1 each in the southeast and southwest. Finally, she inscribed what looked like a spell formula between these points. The moment he saw it, Mok Jiangyun's eyes lit up with recognition. This is... He had seen this spell formula before, though he wasn't sure exactly where. During the second test at the Corpse Blood Valley of the Heaven and Earth Society, he had faced a berserk Imi beast called Galgeo while trying to capture a flag. Afterwards, he had also discovered a spell to make Imi go berserk in the magic books and research notes possessed by another 3 eyes, Zhou Taichong, and it was almost identical to this. However, there was one problem with this spell: it excessively increased the Yin energy in the atmosphere to amplify their killing nature, resulting in an unimaginably large consumption of magical power. And once all the magical power was exhausted, the berserk state would end. To perform a spell on such an enormous scale would require an unimaginable amount of magical power. Is it realistically possible to secure enough magical power to perform this? The scale of the spell was far too large. A spell that could cover the entire Central Plains was beyond imagination. At this scale, it might only be possible if numerous magical tools imbued with magical power and thousands, no, tens of thousands of diviners exhausted all their magical power and vital energy. As he thought this, he noticed Jin Yuren making special markings at a few places between the completed spell formation. One was not far from the Sichuan Tang clan, and another was pointing exactly at the Heaven and Earth Society. What could these be indicating? Mok Jiangyun asked. What are those? I'm not sure. It was written that the forbidden technique is needed at these 4 points. The forbidden technique is needed here? The Heaven and Earth Society was where Wai Soyan was, so that made sense. But he had no idea what the other 3 places were. There was no apparent pattern, and they were scattered in different locations. Is that all? Ah. Come to think of it, below the places where it said the forbidden technique was needed, it was written 6 demons. At these words, one of Mok Jiangyun's eyebrows shot up. Chong Ryong spoke to him in a meaningful voice. Mortal. Don't you remember what happened at the Heaven and Earth Society? The assassin king of the sea, one of the 6 demons, is there. Among the monsters known as Emimanjiang, there exists a hierarchy. This hierarchy is divided into ferocious beasts, strange beasts, wicked beasts, demonic beasts, and spirit beasts. Among these, the highest rank is called spirit beast, and among them, there are 6 spirit beasts that are infinitely close to being divine beasts. The Emimanjiang refer to these as the 6 demons or the 6 demon kings. Each of these 6 demons was considered a disaster in itself. And sealed in the hidden vault of the Corpse Blood Valley at the Heaven and Earth Society was one of these 6 demons, the Assassin King of the Sea, the Restraining Badger. At the same time, a cliff so steep that looking down made one feel as if gazing into an endless abyss. Not far from the cliff, outside a wall, countless corpses of Emimanjiang overflowed, and among them stood a muscular young man, covered in green and black blood, struggling to stay on his feet. Ha! Ha! The young man was Yumujin, a member of the Yu clan guarding this place. The Emimanjiang, who had momentarily paused out of fear at the sight of him catching his breath in exhaustion, were now slowly approaching again. There are so many. Together with his father, Yumujik, they had killed nearly 1,000, no, several thousand of them. Despite killing so many, an uncountable number of Emimanjiang were still endlessly pouring in, to the point where even he, who rarely tired, was struggling. Just then, a tremendous roar came from behind. Quang! Quang! With each roar, the earth shook as if an earthquake had struck. Yumujin's face grew worried as he glanced back. His father, who had been holding back the Emimanjiang rushing towards the entrance of the formation, had hurriedly headed towards the source of that being's roar coming from behind. It's too fast. It hadn't been long since his father had subdued that being, yet it had awakened again. The frequency was now becoming worrisome. Normally, it wouldn't be a concern, but his father was also quite exhausted from fighting this enormous number of Emimanjiang alongside him. Quang! Quo! Just then, along with the thunderous sound, the roar of that being reached all the way here. At this, the Emimanjiang who had been stationary suddenly let out roars as if inspired by that being's tremendous cry, and charged forward like soldiers with raised morale. Quo! Keek keek keek! Ka-ka-ka-ka-ka! Faced with the oncoming Emimanjiang whose spirits had been revived, Yumujin turned the dial on the force-suppressing bracelet on his right arm. Kiriririk! Shuu! As he turned it completely, white steam emerged from Yumujin's entire body, which began to turn black. Though exhausted, if he couldn't stop these creatures, the place his clan had been guarding would be exposed. Yumujin clenched his fist, about to swing it. But then... Look! Kook! Had he pushed himself too hard? A terrible pain surged through his heart, which hadn't fully healed, causing Yumujin to clutch his chest and stagger. Not missing this moment, the higher-ranked diabolic beasts and demonic beasts among the Emimanjiang simultaneously attacked Yumujin. Quo! Kaya! Damn it! Yumujin swung his fist towards them, barely enduring the pain in his heart. As Yumujin swung his fist, and tremendous wind pressure arose, enveloping the charging wicked beasts and demonic beasts simultaneously. Quack-quack-quack-wang! Just when it seemed he had repelled them, one demonic beast burst through the dust and debris, grabbed Yumujin, and frantically charged towards the mountain wall. Quarururu! Kuuk! Yumujin, smashed into the mountain wall, continued to be pushed back even as he collided with it. Meanwhile, a black silhouette darted towards the entrance of the formation that had been left open as Yumujin was pushed back. Hugh! Hugh! Yumujik, drenched in sweat, held a pointed wooden pillar inscribed with red sutras as he caught his breath, looking down at the abyss-like cliff below. Kururururu! This is bad. Whether due to lack of strength, the blue light visible at the bottom of the cliff wasn't weakening, but growing stronger. At this rate, the worst-case scenario might really unfold. Quack! Hugh! As he took a deep breath, Yumujik's body began to glow black, and steam-like substance started to rise from his entire body. Having gathered his strength, Yu Mujik threw the wooden pillar inscribed with red sutras towards the bottom of the cliff. Pang! The wooden pillar pierced through layers of air. Strong ripples formed wherever it passed. But before it could become a mere speck. Kuu! The blue light flickered strongly, a roar echoed out, and in response, a gale-like wind pressure surged up from the cliff along with shockwaves. With this, the wooden pillar disintegrated before it could even reach its target. Pass. Oh no! Yu Mujik's expression hardened. At this rate, the seal on this being might really break. Just then. It seems that even the Yu clan, being human after all, can't stand against sheer numbers. There's no winning against quantity, it seems. Flinch. Yu Mujik quickly turned his head at the voice from behind. About 10 paces in front of him stood a figure wearing a bamboo hat, hands behind their back. Even though he was exhausted from depleting his physical strength, how could someone approach this close without him noticing? This was surprising, but suddenly his son Yu Mujin flashed through his mind. Mujin. Could it be that the boy had fallen? Strong. As he stood there in shock, the bamboo-hatted figure drew the sword at their waist and approached with a sneer. You've worked hard all this time, so shall we now release the Great Strength King? Chapter 458. Approaching Omen. Part 2. Great Yen Temple of the Esoteric Buddhism, known for True Words, in Datong, northern Shaanxi province. Behind the temple stood a large, towering peak, surrounded by over 100 Vajra warriors of the esoteric Buddhism chanting sutras while holding Vajras. The solemn chanting echoed throughout the mountainside, bringing peace to the minds and bodies of those who heard it. However, the Vajra warriors chanting looked unwell. Their complexions were poor, with dark circles under their eyes, all looking extremely fatigued as if they hadn't slept for a long time. Om Samani Samani Hum Harihana Harihana Hum Harihana Banaya Hum Anaya Hak Bombara Hum Batak. Nevertheless, they chanted the sutra without rest. In the midst of this, one Vajra warrior broke out in a cold sweat, and then... Pooh! Black blood spurted from his mouth like a fountain. The blood gushed out in such quantities that it seemed he might die from excessive bleeding just from what came out of his mouth. Alarmed, the nearby Vajra warriors were about to stop chanting, when, Cal, an old monk standing behind them, holding a rosary, let out a shout. The Vajra warriors hesitated for a moment, then sat back down and resumed chanting the sutra. Om Samani Samani Hum Harihana Harihana Hum Harihana Banaya Hum Anaya Hak Bombara Hum Batak. Meanwhile, the old monk hurriedly ran to the monk who was spewing blood. Kek kek kek. The condition of the Vajra warrior who kept vomiting blood was truly at its worst. As if all the fluids in his body were draining out, he was rapidly becoming emaciated, and black blood vessels were rising to the surface of his exposed skin, making him look hideous. The old monk sat behind the Vajra warrior, placed a Vajra against him, and summoned the power of the Buddha's way. Kuu! The Vajra warrior convulsed as if in agony. Despite this, the old monk didn't stop and continued to push in the power of the Buddha's way. At that moment, Waya! A black, ominous haze rose from the mouth of the Vajra warrior who had been spewing blood. Then, Dududuk! The Vajra warrior grabbed his own neck and twisted it backwards. Kung! The old monk's expression darkened at the sight of the Vajra warrior falling with his neck broken. Even the power of the Buddha's way, accumulated over many years, couldn't overcome the evil energy that had penetrated the Vajra warrior. But this wasn't the end. Kek. Kek. Pusik. Once again, another Vajra warrior lifted his head and spewed black blood from his mouth. The old monk was about to get up and run to the Vajra warrior, when... Pusik. 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 All around, Vajra warriors lifted their heads and spewed black blood. The old monk's expression hardened at the sight of them. The bodies of the convulsing Vajra warriors were wasting away at an alarming rate. When just one Vajra warrior had been spewing blood, everyone had endured at the old monk's shout, but now with over 10 of them spewing blood. Heek! Run away! We're all going to die. Some of the Vajra warriors who had gone into convulsions cried out, pale-faced, and frantically tried to escape. Stop! Even the old monk's shout couldn't stop them. The grotesque deaths of the Vajra warriors had caused a rift, and nearly half of them, unable to contain their fear, threw away their Vajras and fled. This can't be. If we stop here, everything will have been for nothing. The old monk shouted, infusing his voice with true chi, then walked in front of the Vajra warriors surrounding the peak, clasped his hands together, and loudly chanted the demon-subduing true words. Om Samani Samani Hum Harihana Harihana Hum Harihana Banaya Hum Anaya Hak Bombara Hum Batak. As the old monk chanted, a golden light of Buddhist power flowed from his body. The profound Buddhist energy seemed to calm the other Vajra warriors who had been trying to flee in fear. They sat back down in their places and followed the old monk in chanting the demon-subduing true words. It seemed as though the chanting was stabilizing again. Just then, Kek! The old monk who had been chanting grabbed his own throat. Then, as if in agony, he fell to his knees and began to convulse violently, his face turning red. Master! 2 Vajra warriors from the front row rushed to support him. However, the old monk, writhing in pain, pushed them away. As the Vajra warriors tried to grab him again. Queek! The old monk vomited, but it wasn't black blood, it was strangely shaped worms. What on earth? The Vajra warriors, shocked at the sight of the bizarre worms, stepped back, at a loss for what to do. What kind of ominous sign was this? Was this evil so potent that even an old monk who had accumulated decades of Buddhist practice couldn't withstand it? As soon as the Vajra warriors' chanting stopped. Kek! Pusik! 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 Once again, Vajra warriors all around began lifting their heads and spewing black blood like fountains. The fear and terror that had momentarily subsided gripped the crowd again in an instant. I don't want to die. Uaya! Screaming, Vajra warriors tried to flee from all directions. However, unlike those who had escaped earlier, the Vajra warriors who stood up from their seats couldn't lift their feet from the ground, as if their legs were held in place. What is this? I can't lift my feet. Heek! As they struggled to lift their feet, something even more terrifying happened. Kwaduk! Those trying to lift their feet had their legs torn off. Kaya! My legs! The Vajra warriors whose legs had been torn off fell to the ground, screaming in agony. But then, their bodies began to stick to the ground, as if being absorbed. My body! As they were absorbed, their skin tore and they began to be sucked into the ground. The sight was truly horrific. Skin and muscles twisted, bones broke, it was almost unbearable to watch. The Vajra warriors near the old monk who had vomited the bizarre worms dropped their Vajras and trembled in fear at this horrific scene. Sumal. Before their eyes, they saw the enormous amount of blood shed by the Vajra warriors moving on its own, flowing up towards the peak. The large quantity of blood that had flowed up was absorbed into the peak. Kururu! The peak began to shake violently as if hit by an earthquake, and cracks started to form. The eyes of the old monk, who had been suffering while vomiting worms, widened as if they would tear. This was because his eyes met the chilling gaze visible through the widening cracks. Kug! Pong! With that, the old monk's body suddenly swelled up and then burst. And he wasn't the only one. The same happened to the 2 Vajra warriors trembling in fear nearby. Their bodies also swelled up and then burst. Surururuk! The blood that flowed from their bodies also mixed with the flowing blood and was absorbed into the peak. Giabik! Amidst this tragic scene, a figure walked through the blood. This figure wearing a bamboo hat was forming a hand seal with one hand, and in the other, held a gruesome ritual tool made of interwoven skulls. The bamboo-hatted figure, appearing with this ritual tool, spoke while looking at the enormous being inside the crumbling peak. The time has come to spread those white wings again. White Phoenix Demon King. In a cave beneath a deep cliff in Panan, Zhejiang Province. Entering the cave, one would find a large cavern studded with countless luminous pearls, like stars in the night sky. And beneath this cavern, numerous formations were densely engraved. In the center of the formations, there existed something enormous. This massive being, occupying nearly half of the huge cavern that was almost 100 jang in size, had a golden mane, a tiger-like head, and a tail that seemed to be woven from hundreds of blades. Kururu. Its appearance was exactly like that of a lion. Horrifyingly, the entire body of this enormous lion was pierced by hundreds of hooks, and the chains connecting these hooks were densely embedded in the cavern walls. Upon closer inspection, one could see that red letters, appearing to be spells, were engraved on the chains as well. These were Kururu. If the giant lion tried to move even a little, Yuong. The hooks and chains engraved with red letters would simultaneously pull, threatening to tear apart the lion's limbs, no, its entire body. The pain was so intense that this enormous lion couldn't move an inch. One peculiar thing about this lion was that it had no eyes. Rather than being naturally eyeless, it seemed they had been forcibly removed, leaving sunken holes. Kung Kung? At some point, this giant lion began to sniff and flare its nostrils, then tried to raise its crouched body, enduring even the hooks constricting it, with intense hostility. As the lion tried to raise its body, Kururururu, the entire cavern began to shake and tremble. It felt as if it might collapse at any moment, but as soon as the formations densely engraved on the floor activated, the vibrations were absorbed and disappeared. At this moment, someone wearing a bamboo hat walked towards the lion, hands behind their back. The lion's face twitched, and then, Quoo! It let out a tremendous roar that seemed like it could burst eardrums. The roar caused a storm-like gale to sweep through the cavern, but the bamboo-hatted figure, seemingly unconcerned, approached right up to the lion's nose. Then, stopping in front of it, the bamboo-hatted figure spoke. "Will you follow me if I give you new eyes? Or will you follow me if I give you another chance for revenge?" Lion Grasping King, 6. The Imperial Palace in Kaifeng, Hunan Province. In one of the most splendid quarters of a noble consort in the inner palace. Geojik. The delicate white hand holding a teacup cracked and shattered. "Your Highness." As the shattered teacup pieces fell, the pretty court lady beside her exclaimed in surprise and hurriedly helped the noble consort shake off the remaining pieces in her hand. Then, looking outside, she called out loudly. "Is anyone there? Quickly. Sook." However, the court lady had to stop at a raised hand gesture. The court lady spoke in a troubled voice. "Noble consort, we must call for a physician immediately. Your hand must have been cut by the sharp." Her eyes widened. This was because the noble consort's hand, which she had assumed would surely be cut, was perfectly fine. Even she had been slightly cut while brushing off the pieces from the consort's hand just moments ago. What could this mean? As she wondered, she saw the corners of the noble consort's mouth turn up. The court lady couldn't help but let out a gasp at the sight of the smile from noble consort Ho, the most beautiful woman in the imperial palace, worthy of being called a beauty that could topple a nation. Ah. Regardless, noble consort Ho stood up. "Diolkyong, Diolkyong." She then approached the shaking window and opened it. The night sky, without a single cloud, was perfectly clear, but the cold wind blowing strongly like a whirlwind was strangely ominous. As she stretched out her hand to feel this wind with her fingertips, noble consort Ho muttered. "The stench of blood will soon fill the world." Chapter 459. Approaching Omen. Part 3. A dark hall. The surroundings were in complete disarray. Someone approached the figure in the shadows, who was barely containing their anger in front of the pulverized stone throne, and knelt on one knee in respect. He was a man with long hair and prominent red lips, wearing a pristine white uniform. The man could barely breathe due to the heavy aura filling the entire hall from his lord's anger. Eventually, after steadying his breath, the man spoke with a tense expression. "Lord Mokgon. All measures have been taken as you instructed." At these words, Mokgon stared at the man for a moment before waving his hand. As if by magic, the ominous aura heavily pressing down on the hall dissipated. Finding it much easier to breathe, the long-haired man quietly let out a sigh of relief. Then, he cautiously began to speak. However, there is one problem. What is it? We've lost all our brothers in the Heaven and Earth Society. We need to retrieve and release what you personally sealed there, but to do so, we'd need to send in new brothers. At that moment, Mokgon cut him off. Have you already forgotten? Pardon? We haven't lost everything. At these words, the red-lipped man's eyes widened. Come to think of it, there was one card he had forgotten about. The single card they had kept in reserve for emergencies, even after mobilizing all their other resources. From today on, Young-sun, you too are a member of our family. Yes, Elder. Ahem. Yes, Father. Good. But Father, who is that behind you? Behind the Elder, no, Father's legs, I could see part of a face, or rather, just the eyes of a child peeking out. The child was so pretty that it was clearly a girl. Is this child to be my little sister? I couldn't help but smile a little. But then Father forcefully pulled the girl out from behind him and said, "This child is your older brother." Older brother? What does he mean? No matter how I looked at it, it was clearly a girl. I couldn't understand why he was calling this child my older brother. And when Father first came to find me, he had clearly said, "You have excellent qualities. I'd like you to become our family's eldest son." And me, become your son, sir? Yes. So, I was fortunate enough to be adopted into one of the most prestigious families in the association. But why is he telling me to call this girl my older brother? I thought the family had no male heirs, which is why they were accepting me. As I was trying to understand, the girl who had been shyly hiding behind Father reluctantly approached me under his pressure and held out her hand, saying, Let's get along from now on." I reluctantly took her hand and greeted her. "Nice to meet you, older brother." Perhaps our relationship was already skewed from that moment. 5 years passed since then. During this time, I learned many things. Originally, I was destined to be accepted as the eldest son, as Father had said. However, due to the last wishes of the late madam, that damned brat is playing the role of the older brother with that ridiculous appearance. A mere girl has stolen my position. But I couldn't express these complaints. No matter how absurd this was, that girl truly carried the family's bloodline, while I, despite being brought in to continue the lineage, was merely an adopted son. There was only one thing I could do. Prove that I was far superior to this girl in terms of qualifications. However, excellent. The one receiving praise from Father was not me, but that girl. I thought, how great could a mere girl's qualifications be? But she was unbelievably outstanding. Even though I had been accepted for my excellent qualities, this was a monster. She was so clever that the saying, "Hear one, understand 10" wasn't an exaggeration. When taught one thing, she understood 10. Because of this, at some point, Father began to habitually say this while looking back and forth between me and the girl in the training ground. What a pity. Such a shame. Damn it. What's a pity? That the qualities of the adopted son they brought in are lower than this girl's? Or is it regret that this girl with such outstanding qualities isn't a son? Whatever it was, I was filled with rage. But I never showed it. I'm just an adopted son, so to survive here, I must never do anything to make myself disliked. 2 more years passed. Despite my blood, sweat, and tears, the gap in our qualities still hadn't narrowed. At this rate, there were even whispers that this girl might receive the title of the most outstanding 5 peaks within the association in just a few years. Damn it. I don't understand. I train longer than that brat, even cutting back on sleep to circulate my chi, so why can't I catch up? Could it be that Father is paying more attention to her? I knew he wasn't that kind of person, but I couldn't help but suspect it. Sigh. Could they really be planning to give the successor position to this girl who can't even continue the family line? If that's the case, I might really want to kill her. While I was anxious day by day, this girl wasn't. Tack. As I turned my head at the touch on my shoulder, a finger poked my cheek. It was that wretched girl. Annoyingly playful, she asked with a big grin, "Got you again." Ha ha ha. What are you doing? What would I be doing? You were staring so intently at my room, I thought you might be angry with me or something. Angry? Am I wrong? How could that be? I'm your right-hand man, aren't I? I'll support you in maintaining the family. So don't worry. At my words, the girl's expression became subtle. Could it be that she doesn't trust me? As I wondered this, the girl suddenly hugged me tightly and said with a smile, "That's right. My little brother." Thank you. This hateful wench. My little brother? Is she showing off just because she was born about 3 years earlier? The more she does this, the more I hate this girl. To the point where I really want to kill her. A few days passed like this. Suddenly, Father called us. With an unusually solemn face, Father said, "Both of you, go to the Corpse Blood Valley." What? I was dumbfounded at these words. Isn't the Corpse Blood Valley a place where only those from minor sects or those seeking fame go at the risk of their lives? Why is he telling us to go to such a place? It's for the long-cherished wish of our association. The descendants of the other 5 kings have all agreed to participate, so you two should also take the lead and join. Damn it. I thought that by becoming an adopted son of the family, I wouldn't have to go to the Corpse Blood Valley. But now they're telling everyone to go there? Isn't this too much? But the girl calmly replied, "I'll keep that in mind." And as soon as we left Father's study, she turned to me with a bright smile and said, "Don't worry, little brother. I'll protect you." Quack. At her words, I was once again filled with rage. I could barely stand the thought of going there, and yet this girl acts nonchalant and even tries to encourage me? Damn it. Who are you to make me feel so pathetic? You really make me feel so small. In the end, I was sent to the Corpse Blood Valley at the mere age of 15. The first challenge was the iron ball competition. Huff huff. Brother. Take it. But isn't this what you found? You go on ahead. I can find another one quickly. Brother. Damn brat. Does she think I can't even pass this kind of test, so she's giving me what she found? How little must she think of me to do something like this? I sincerely wished for this girl to die. But in the end, not only did she find another iron ball as she said, but she also beat down everyone who came at her and even obtained a prize. The second challenge was the flag battle. I deliberately avoided being in the same team as her. I didn't want to be with someone who made me feel so pathetic while calling me little brother and such. While searching for flags, I was unexpectedly ambushed by a group from minor sects. If we get rid of you, passing the next test will be easy. I prided myself on being unbeatable among my peers, but I couldn't handle a combined attack from 6 people. Each of them wasn't much individually, but why did I have to suffer like this at the hands of such people? In the end, I fled to save my life while fighting them. Then, while precariously using Qigong on a cliff, I fell into the ravine below. Kururu. Aya. Is this better than dying at the hands of such people? But I didn't die. Splash. Luckily, I fell into a pool of water and survived. But something felt strange. Although the cliff ravine was dark, I wasn't scared of such things, yet my whole body was trembling with goosebumps. As I looked around, I was shocked. What is this? There were countless bones scattered about, and judging by the clothes they wore, they seemed to be from students who had entered the Corpse Blood Valley. What on earth is this place? Seized by an ominous feeling due to the countless bone fragments, I fearfully tried to quickly climb back up the cliff. But I fell back down due to some unknown force. And as I was being dragged by something, that something was a strange person with a terribly burned face and no eyes. Terrified, I tried my best to escape, but it was useless. This strange person was a monster. It's impressive that you survived, but unfortunately, you've seen this place, so I'll have to kill you. Quack. Kek kek. You're going to kill me just for seeing this? It feels unfair somehow. If I had known I would die so meaninglessly like this, I should have just done what I wanted. It's so frustrating to die without accomplishing anything, always being cautious about being an adopted son. If I had killed that girl when I had the chance, would it have been a little better? Just then, a voice was heard from somewhere. Wait. What? How? At the voice's command, the burned being loosened its grip on my throat. Then I saw someone approaching. Flinch. Surprisingly, it was a being with an eye on its forehead. This bizarre being looked at me with an evil smile and said, You have an interesting desire. This was the turning point of my fate and my first encounter with him. Thanks to him, I obtained everything I wanted. Not only the position of the family's successor but also the title of one of the 5 tigers, the highest 5 peaks in the association. It seemed like everything would continue to go as I wished. I thought that as long as I followed him, who protected me, everything would go according to plan. However, now a crisis has come to that. Although it was just an avatar, even with his intervention, everything has gone awry. There are no more allies left in here. It could be said to be the worst situation, as all of his subordinates who existed within the association have been killed off. What should I do about this? As he said, I didn't participate in the war under the pretext of closed-door training. But because of that, I've become suspicious. Even if my father understood, the Shadow Clan was demanding an investigation because I didn't respond to the society leader's summons. I was pondering how to handle this situation. Then my eyes caught sight of insects swarming under a tree. Thinking could it be? I approached the spot, and the corners of my mouth twitched before curling up into a sinister smile. As expected, he had made all the arrangements. Around the hour of the ox, 1 to 3 a.m., in the dark dawn, a group was stealthily moving towards the location of the hidden vault near the Corpse Blood Valley. There were about 20 masked individuals. They were all experts, a small elite force whose footsteps were barely audible. After the internal conflict of the Heaven and Earth Society, they were short on manpower, so the Corpse Blood Valley Master and the remaining forces had all entered the inner city, making it easy for this group to move. Sususuk. The group reached the cliff peak in front of the hidden vault and stopped there. The imposing bamboo-hatted figure at the lead spoke in a low voice to the person beside him. Are you sure that's what he promised? Didn't you see his power yourself, Father? He will protect us. I understand. 5 of you stay here to guard, the rest follow me. Pat. With a hand gesture, he took the lead and climbed the cliff. Despite his imposing physique, he nimbly scaled the cliff and entered the hidden vault. Once inside, he ordered 10 people to guard the entrance and its vicinity, then climbed to the 3rd floor of the vault. He had been told that it would be in a small cave in the corner of the 3rd floor. They soon discovered a small cave marked with a red line. It's there. They entered the small cave marked with a red line and began searching for it. However, after searching for a while, they noticed something strange. They were told it would be here, so why wasn't it? Puzzled, the imposing bamboo-hatted figure asked the person next to him. Wasn't it supposed to be here? The bamboo-hatted person beside him also seemed confused, tilting his head as he replied, This can't be right. He clearly said it would be here. Why would it be there? Flinch. At that moment, they all turned their heads towards a voice coming from outside the small cave. But there was nothing visible there. The bamboo-hatted figure slightly lifted his hat, narrowing his eyes as he scanned the surroundings. If someone were there, it would be impossible for them to deceive his sense of chi, being one of the 5 kings and 8 stars of the association. But something felt off. What is this? There was clearly nothing visible, yet he sensed a strange energy stimulating his chi sense. Unable to find the right words to describe it, he felt goosebumps rising. It was similar to ghostly energy. Just then, the person next to the bamboo-hatted figure suddenly showed a bewildered expression. What's wrong? Tak. Despite his question, the person next to the bamboo-hatted figure even took a step back. Young-sun. The bamboo-hatted figure called out the name of the person beside him and grabbed his shoulder. Young-sun then spoke with trembling eyes. How are you here? You? What on earth is he talking about? While the bamboo-hatted figure and others were puzzled, only Young-sun's eyes clearly saw someone's figure. That someone was a young girl with half of her hair turned white, her entire body wrapped in chains. Gyu Soha?